Good afternoon, Awoken, and welcome back for a special St. Patrick's Day episode of Awoken with Aulden. As always, per usual, I'm your host, Alden S. Nance, and we are very excited to be back with you on this special Monday episode. Going to be discussing the history of Ireland politics with my dear friend and a great friend of the show, Alicia. Excited to have her on as we deep dive into Ireland. Felt like we deserved a little bit of break from Middle East. We've been talking about the Middle East pretty much for the last week, 2 weeks. So Ireland's a little change of tune, different culture, different people, all that good stuff. So excited to share some of this research and I should say from Alicia's perspective, real world experience about Ireland with you guys this evening. If you haven't caught a little recap of what we discussed this morning on the live stream, we were walking around DC taking your questions. We were discussing the Tucker Carlson incident that earlier this weekend or Friday, we saw Mr. Carlson release a video and it expressed his concerns with maybe the United States peeking into his messages and whatnot. As we know, at least as of this moment, the United States has not made any comments on this situation. So we had a great discussion around that. We also had a great live stream this morning, had our biggest one of the channel. We had 6,500 of you tune in to the live stream. So very excited to be back with you this evening. If you caught us this weekend, we were at anti-Iranian regime protests, talking to Iranian diaspora or about their views of the conflict, and as well did a couple of other. Here, let me get this fixed real quick. All right, there we go. Yeah, had my audio screwed up. However, we talked with Iranian diaspora about their concerns with the conflict, about what they hoped the president of the United States would do in the future. And as well, we talked about if you were here this weekend, about Iran and the Middle East as a whole. So, yeah, if you haven't checked those out, definitely make sure to check those out here soon. We'll be live with you again tomorrow morning with we'll just be walking around DC again, maybe go to the Embassy Row, maybe see what is happening at the Ireland Embassy, maybe go to the prior Iranian Embassy as well, just see what's happening there. And okay, so if it's your first time joining the live stream tonight, would love to remind you, please give the video a like, hit that subscribe button. That's the best way you can support our channel. As of right now, if you were with us earlier this weekend, we eclipsed 500 followers or subscribers rather for the first time, and we are now at least at the beginning of this stream, we were at 549. So we've gained around 80 subscribers in the last couple of days. So very excited to share that with you. Our page is ascending brick by brick, patriot by patriot, and day by day. So we're going to keep grinding here. So, and if you're not able to catch on the YouTube Live, you can also find us on Spotify, Twitch, Instagram, X, Rumble, Facebook, and of course YouTube after. So we're on 7 different platforms. Definitely want to make sure you're following and liking on all 7. Okay, so without further ado, everybody, we are going to introduce this evening's guest, my dear friend Alicia. We met when we were working in the Senate together. So here I want to bring her on stage for everybody. Welcome, Alicia.
Thanks, Alden. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Yeah, and I kind of hinted at this the last couple of streams, but Alicia, a sharp political mind and involved in Irish politics, and I'll let her elaborate a little more on that herself.
Thanks, Alden. Yeah, my name is Alicia. I'm from Ireland. Lived here my whole life. But as Alden mentioned, I did a stint in DC, where I met Alden, who also is a great political mind and is doing great work. Um, but yeah, so currently I studied law as my undergraduate, which you can do in Ireland rather than say going to law school. But I'm now in law school as well, studying to be a barrister part time, which is basically like a lawyer. And also still working in politics as my full time day job in Ireland. So have been involved in politics really since quite a young age, lots of different areas. But yeah, really excited to talk about Ireland today and its history. And I remember being in when I was living in America in DC and dispelling a lot of myths about Ireland. So hopefully I can dispel a few myths today and tell you the real Ireland and the real history of Ireland as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, at least it will help awoken the audience to the true history of Ireland and what it really is all about. All right, so without further ado, we'll get the slide deck up and going for this. Wonderful. Okay, let's get comment board on. Actually, let's wait till someone comments. Alrighty, so yeah, Ireland is changing, right? We know there's a lot of whether it's demographics or just culturally or anything, right? The world's changing every day. So we're excited to, with the St. Patrick's Day special, couldn't think of a better time to do Ireland. If you've been on the show before, we've talked about Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, Mexico, Venezuela, Iran, Japan, even. So we've gone a little bit all around the world. Righty, so just a little brief overview of Ireland for you guys. We're looking at it's an island in the North Atlantic, west of Great Britain, and there's two main, I should say, states or political entities within the country that is a still currently a very large dividing line uh, for the population, and there are some deep roots, British rule, and some independence movements as well with that. Would there be anything you'd like to add for this, at least, or would you say good little overview?
Yeah, I think you summed it up well. I actually didn't have anything major to add, but
Mm,
yeah, I think you said it perfectly in that, and I think we're going to get into it later about why Ireland is divided into two different places at the moment, and has been for obviously a long time. And I think probably the split is a reason why a lot of people, not just Americans, but a lot of people I've met just while traveling feel like Ireland is in the UK, because obviously Northern Ireland is in the UK.
mm.
But the Republic of Ireland is not in the UK. We're our own country. So I think that is probably the biggest misconception about Ireland. I think a lot of people have an idea about the history, but I think the geographics are still a little can be lost on people. So, but I think you've summed it up very well in the split and the division.
Awesome. And to add on why Ireland matters today, a lot of I think Americans may view Ireland as just an ally and just about Guinness, but there's actually a much deeper meaning to the country and its significance geopolitically and even the partnership with the United States. A lot of history, right? We know we're going to be talking about famines later on in the slide deck and how large chunks of population moved from Ireland or fled even to the United States and other countries. And there's a lot of uh, economic industry that occurs within Ireland, and some. Um, we still need to understand that there are huge tensions with Northern Ireland, which remains part of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've shaped it up there well in the sense that obviously there's a massive Irish American demographic in the States, and that actually has shifted quite a lot. a lot of Irish Americans now, I think, are mostly Republican, whereas I think they used to be quite democratic in nature. So that has shifted massively over the years. I think we'll probably get into that as well when we look deeper into Irish immigration to America and how it's transformed over time. How we probably went from one of the most discriminated groups in America to having, an Irish American president like John F. Kennedy. So,
Mhm.
and also how America helped shape peace in Ireland with the Good Friday Agreement. So we can definitely get further into that. But I do think it's still there's still massive relationships between Ireland and America, even if a lot of the mass immigration was a long time ago. And obviously, the Taoiseach, our Prime Minister, being in DC at the moment, and we'll be meeting with President Trump tomorrow on St. Paddy's Day, or St. Patty's Day, as you guys like to call it. That's quite significant as well, that our Taoiseach gets a one-on-one opportunity with the President of the United States. Obviously, not every president in the world will get that kind of global focus on a meeting on such a significant day. So that also, I think, portrays how important the relationship is for America and for Ireland.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. All right, everybody, we're going to go all the way back ancient Ireland, talking. We always do this when we do our countries, right? Whether it's the samurai in Japan or the Inuit people in Greenland, we always want to go all the way back to provide you the full context with it. And even before history started being recorded, even it had been inhabited for several years. There was tribal kingdoms that were implemented into the cultures. Some language, traditions, identity, all that good stuff. And it was never, however, never conquered by Rome, though. So I think that's something that some people might get confused sometimes with.
Yeah, and I think I was saying to Alden before the stream, like a lot of the ancient Ireland I would have learned in what you guys would call elementary school. So my knowledge of facts and history wouldn't be great, but I think the tribal Celtic, fighting warrior spirit is sometimes what people also associate with Ireland, like the fighting Irish, and
Mhm.
that we're kind of tough, hardened people. And a lot of that is to do with our history, that we've been through so much as a small country, with colonization, with our own war of independence, and of course our civil war as well, and fighting to be a free state. So, and also I think a lot of it goes back to ancient Ireland and how we were warriors, and that kind of spirit in the country, how we started. So I think a lot of that still lives in Irish people today.
You know it. And you have Notre Dame fighting Irish and South Bend, Indiana, right? Um, but yeah, we have a comment. Does from at Nicholas Alexander 940, Alicia, does that saying or statement ring a bell? I believe it's maybe has to do with the culture.
Yeah, Air Brock. I mean, so I think I assume it means up Ireland. My Irish is really bad, which is something I'll also talk about lately. But if Nicholas has the translation, but like a big part of Irish history and the colonization is that Ireland lost a lot of its language, lost a lot of its culture because of British rule in Ireland. And Irish families were actually paid to not speak Irish and to not play our sport and to, not sing our songs and not play our music, because they were, of course, trying to Ireland forever. There you go. I was close, up Ireland. Um, but yeah, so that's a massive part of you. So Ireland has its own language, the Irish language, Gaelga. But as I was saying, a lot of it is lost on a lot of people. There are areas in Ireland where you will only speak Irish.
Mhm.
There's very little English. Now people can of course speak English, but yeah, it's tough, because I guess people sometimes are surprised when I tell them that Ireland has its own language, and then when I tell them that a lot of us are not very good at it, and that all comes back to the history and the British rule, and unfortunately that. But there is a massive cultural revival of Irish, which is great, and that is a lot to do with, I suppose, people kind of waking up to the history and what really happened in Ireland and understanding it, and I suppose our generation becoming very political and wanting to revive the language and the culture and everything. And yeah, so it's something that I'm trying to get better at, but it's it's learning a second language. It's never easy, but definitely it's something that's on the up in Ireland, which is great.
Of course. And I think, yeah, you make a great point, and something that I just learned from you is that I figured there might have been a language, but didn't. Yeah, I didn't know there were only maybe certain pockets where it's still predominantly spoken and used, for sure. And then, all right, so Celtic Ireland, right? Celtics, they lived around 500 BC, brought their new languages, warrior culture, as Alicia alluded to, with the Fighting Irish, right? In South Bend, Indiana, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And yeah, different languages through Irish cultural traditions and mythology and heroic warrior legends became, like Alicia said, about how there were so many, how that kind of warrior fighting spirit still holds on in Irish culture and tradition today.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've summed that up well, really. And I think, again, the language developing and I suppose the cultural revival that we're having now is really important. And I think it's helped kind of our generation to connect with old Ireland a lot better as well. And I suppose I'm not sure if you guys have heard of Kneecap, but they're like a rap group that have been quite controversial in ways in Ireland and in Europe, and I guess in the UK. But they've kind of helped, I suppose, bring our Irish alive through rap, which is, you don't find a lot of rap music in Irish, I suppose. There is some, but not a lot. So that's kind of helped. Music has really helped develop the revival of Ireland. So.
And we have a couple comments from at Jimmy SSMS, is an Irish American, and said visited Dublin last year, and Ireland has become unrecognizable. And says he has a lot of respect for Justin Barrett. He's a true Irish nationalist, unlike Sinn Féin or Fiend. Is that a name that comes to mind?
Yeah, Sinn Féin and Fine Gael, they're two political parties in Ireland.
Gotcha.
Sinn Féin would be the biggest opposition party, and Fine Gael are in government. So I'm not entirely clear about um, what he means by that they've betrayed Ireland, because they're on opposite sides of the political spectrum. So not sure what that means, but I hope you enjoyed Ireland, and I hope you had a Guinness.
All right, Jimmy, keep the comments coming. We'll feed them when appropriate. Okay, so you had these 9 hostages. This is something back kind of more ancient, or beginning of Irish history, that he was a legendary High King of Ireland, believed lived in around 4th to 5th century, and some historians even believe that he Irish raiders under his leadership captured St. Patrick from Britain. Is that something that maybe in primary school was discussed for you guys? What's the common Irish consensus, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember this person at all. But that could just be I'm really bad at my early Ireland history. But I mean, obviously, it's the case that the story of St. Patrick is that he was kidnapped
Mm-hmm.
from Wales, is my understanding. And was brought to Ireland and was a slave and worked on a farm and, had a dream to escape, and he escaped back to Wales. So I think also a lot of people think that St. Patrick was Irish, but he was not Irish. He was Welsh. So,
Wow, did not know that.
yeah, and he then, but apparently this is the person who kidnapped him. I'm not sure if that's true, but and then he escaped Ireland, went back to his family, but then he had another dream that he could hear Ireland calling him, and he returned to Ireland and started spreading Christianity in Ireland, which is why he became the patron saint of Ireland. And there's also sort of like a myth, I guess, that St. Patrick got rid of all the snakes out of Ireland. Now, it's questionable whether snakes were ever in Ireland to begin with, but he drove out basically all the paganism out of Ireland and turned Ireland into a Christian country, essentially, which is kind of, I suppose, what the myth associates with. So yeah, there you go. St. Patrick was never Irish at all, but we claim him as our own now.
Nice, yeah, yeah, especially with St. Patrick's Day. So like, does that mean we should be? Is it a Welsh holiday then?
I don't think it's a Welsh holiday. I'm not really sure if they celebrate, but I guess because he's the patron saint of Ireland, that we have a day off work tomorrow, so I'm not complaining.
There we go. Yeah, I cannot complain about that at all. All right, then let's go. We alluded to this a couple minutes ago, how the Roman Empire never conquered Ireland, but however, we do believe that they were aware of the territory in the island at the time. Um, and Ireland was never, it was never conquered or incorporated within the empire. Um, they maybe had aspirations for the island, but never launched a full invasion. So the Celtic culture remained the majority culture and superior, maybe not in a moral sense, but remained the most popular and dominant culture within Ireland.
Yeah, it's interesting that you have about that they refer to Ireland as Hibernia, because how I would have you used the word Hibernia is that in Ireland we use Hibernia English, so it's not English. It's sort of a very bad version of English, I suppose. And some of that I would assume, I'm not extremely knowledgeable on this, but I assume a lot of it is again to do with British rule and learning the language, learning English and what. So like we would have a very, I'm not sure how to describe it properly, but like a casual version of English where when we're speaking to each other, it wouldn't be as, I suppose, properly formed, and a more casual version. And that's why we say things like "What's the story?" and "What's the crack?" and things like that. So that's how I would refer to Hibernia. That in Ireland we speak Hibernia English. So
Certainly, and there's it seemed it was used by ancient Greek and Roman writers, including Julius Caesar,
oh,
to describe the island. So it seemed like maybe just a kind of a Roman thing to do
maybe,
with.
yeah.
And then let's head to, let's head straight into St. Patrick. How Alicia described the Christian religion and faith was spread throughout the island, and helped, Christian missionary who helped spread the religion across the island in the 5th century. He had been tradition, legend, folktale, whatever, captured by Irish raiders and enslaved as a teenager. And Christianity helped, or should say, excuse me, St. Patrick helped Christianity replace Celtic traditions and culture a little bit and made it the Christian nation that it became to today.
Yeah, and another I guess another symbol associated with Ireland is the shamrock. And the story goes that St. Patrick used the shamrock, the three-leaf shamrock, to explain the concept of the Holy Trinity, so Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit as one. So that's kind of another symbolism. Who knows if that is true, but that is the old Irish story. And of course, the shamrock is often associated with Ireland and good luck and St. Patrick's Day.
Absolutely. Yeah, very St. Patrick, pretty important fellow for sure. All right, let's step a step above now. So to the Viking culture within Ireland, from Scandinavia, began attempting to conquer slash attack the island around late 8th century. They targeted coastal settlements for wealth and slaves and other personnel that would assist them. And they were able to establish Dublin, Ireland, as well through their culture and methods of attacking. And they helped. Their early influence was huge for early communities, trade ports, trade networks, and all that good stuff. Okay. So yeah, that's just a little bit about the Vikings in Ireland here. And then Brian Boro, this individual, pretty powerful king. He rose to dominance around the late 10th century, and he helped. He sought out regime change from the Vikings and got it. Actually, he helped. He was killed in battle, but his army and his people helped defeat the Viking armies near Dublin. He was able to form a coalition of a bunch of Irish kingdoms, which helped, start seeking that regime change he so desired, and is more of one of the more well-known historical figures in all of Irish history. So, and Jimmy adds he wanted to unite all of the kings of Ireland. And through my research, that's what I was able to expand on as well, or at least understand, I should say, is that he seemed to be this legendary figure and really, Irish nationalist, whatever kind of term you want to use, is that he really wanted to see positive change and put the Vikings, send them back to where they came. So thank you for the comment, Jimmy. Thank you for being here, Jimmy. If it's your first time on the channel, would love if you gave the video a like and hit that subscribe button. We talk about a bunch of countries geopolitically. So thank you, Jimmy. Some medieval Ireland. So after regime change, after the Vikings, they were sent back in. There were several competing kingdoms, clan warfare, clan identity. There was no really. After Brian passed away, there was no huge effort or huge single leader or single figure within the island that led. It was kind of you have this place, you have that place, you have over here, I have over here. It was just kind of crazy all over the place. And then there's power struggles, instability politically. And it kind of opened up the door a little bit for such a divided nation to be sought over, and for other countries to seek their regional influence, try to project it within the island. So a quick little one there for you. And as I just alluded to, you have some of the they were wide open to foreign influence, and then in 1169, the Norman knights from Wales invaded. Correct. Yep. Good point, Jimmy. Quickly captured territory, built castles. They got towns fortified to how they preferred, and King Henry II in 1171 arrived in Ireland to really assert his authority. Um, and it marked the beginning of centuries of huge political influence by English people within Ireland. So a quite the kings were not able to unite. It was a bunch of and smaller colonies, cities, whatnot. It really opened them to be vulnerable to an invasion, and we see what happened here. All right, now here's where we know Northern Ireland is still within the British, United Kingdom rule, and just like in America, right, the Ireland was also, at least for a period of time, ruled over by Great Britain, the United Kingdom, all those guys. Um, Here, I got a comment from Jimmy says William the Conqueror brought Jewish merchants to help fund the invasion of England, and then he used Jewish merchants to finance the invasion of Erie. Interesting. Did not know that. That's a good little fun fact from Jimmy. Thank you, Jimmy. And through the British rule of Ireland, we saw a lot of the Catholics were shoved from the land um, because the English they brought Protestantism. But this happened for several centuries, and then by around the 1700s, right, Ireland was pretty much totally controlled and governed by British political authorities and the crown, right? So, a pretty big, which still has influence today through Northern Ireland, right? So, a pretty major shift, I should say, for the island and the country, right? So, yeah, I'm sure we will be discussing the British uh, and the United Kingdom a lot here in the next coming up slides. We're nearing present day, right? We're getting there side by side. Okay, so one of the more, I should say, well known aspects, or maybe not even well known, but one of the more major uh, time periods in Ireland's history was a pretty negative and painful death, riddled with death, I should say, rather. And if you were here for the agriculture episode with Carrie a couple months ago, she described how Chinese nationals were caught at the uh, northern border in the United States trying to bring in Blythe to kill and damage United States agricultural land and farmland. So, um, and Jimmy says, my ancestors exiled from Ireland became the British, created a famine and starved my peoples to death, so they came to America for a new life. Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like there was a large Ireland diaspora from this unfortunate event. And we see over 1 million people as a result of the lack of food uh, died from this. Yeah, and around another 1 million fled and to United States, Britain, other countries that would allow them. And something that is maybe discussed a lot today, maybe one of the more intense debates today in Ireland, is the role of the British government. At least from my research, it seemed like the British government, maybe from my initial take, is that maybe it wasn't as intentional as some people think, but it seemed like they still made some mistakes and some major goofs and errors. So I'll kind of let Alicia, if you have any general, maybe not your personal opinion, but some maybe more general thoughts on the debate currently today.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the misconception, and I think Jimmy kind of floats the idea there that the misconception is that the Great Famine was caused by blight and crop failure, which was the trigger for what happened, of course, in the very beginning. But the long story and the length of time that went on, and of course, as you said, 1 million people died, and another between 1 and 2 million people immigrated. So that amount of people was not just caused by a blight of potatoes. The whole famine and the starvation of Irish people was lengthened and increased and caused really by British rule and the decisions and the economic system under the British rule that made the famine and the blight so much worse for people. And basically, because there was food in Ireland, there was plenty of food, there was plenty of wheat and oats and beef and things like that. But it was all being exported out of Ireland because they could get better prices for it in the UK, in England. So the Irish people obviously couldn't afford to pay very high
Right.
prices for this food. So there was food, but it was all being exported. And yeah, it was a really hard time. And I also think that that period of time still has big impacts on the Irish population, and not just, as Jimmy referred to, you know, a lot of Irish Americans now who are generations and generations on who are living in America, but also for the Irish people who are here, who stayed here and who, you know, survived the famine, and um, or families who were still impacted by the famine, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
there's still a lot of, I think, a lot of memory, if it's only subconscious, but memory of such a devastating tragedy to happen to so many people. And I think a really scary figure is that before the famine, there was about 8.2 million people living in Ireland, and today that's just over 7 million people. So
Mm.
we still haven't actually, like, the population today is smaller than it was pre-famine. So that will tell you kind
Wow.
of the impact of not just obviously the very sad deaths, but the impact of immigration on Ireland and the impact of such a tragedy happening. So I think that's important figure to note. But also, I think it's important to talk about the immigration. And when Irish people immigrated, they didn't just immigrate to America, but when they did immigrate to America and to Britain, they were very much seen as the lowest, one of the lowest classes of people, and there was a lot of discrimination against Irish people. I guess anti-Catholic, and feeling like we were poor or uneducated, and signs like "No Irish Need Apply" were very common in adverts on newspapers for jobs. So I think it's really interesting to look at how Irish people in America, Irish immigrants in America, went from there to, you know, where they are now, which is a lot of them have really great jobs. A lot of them went into being like policemen and firefighters, particularly in like New York. And really the it really changed for Irish American or Irish immigrants or Irish Americans, as they probably are now, generations on. So I think it's quite interesting to see that. Of course, there may be still discrimination, but I think generally speaking, the immigrant group have become part of the American mainstream, and Irish Americans are. I met a lot of Irish Americans working in DC, and of course, you know, John F. Kennedy being the first Irish Catholic US president as well, being a monumental shift towards that. So I think it's yeah, it's kind of interesting to look at the whole picture, not just the famine for what it was, but like how the impacts of the immigration have shifted over the years as well.
You know it, and Yeah, it seems like at least today the United States and Ireland have great, to at least my knowledge, have a great relationship. As you mentioned, the um, some big Irish government personnel. They'll be visiting the president tomorrow, which is uh, America. We have maybe not a cultural pride, but we definitely love St. Patrick's Day. We love Guinness. We love all that stuff as well. So definitely a good relationship, I believe, the two countries have with each other. And kind of to Jimmy's point that you just mentioned, saying my ancestors moved to the South because they refused to be part of the United States empire. The majority of the South is made up of Irish Americans. Interesting. I did not know that. That I figured it would be more of a like East Coast, right? D.C., New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, maybe. Um,
Yeah, I
and
think
yeah,
Texas was very popular as well, and which I didn't know. I only saw it recently in a TV program here about Irish immigration, and also I guess Chicago was very popular, and you still have a lot of Irish American people. I mean, they also immigrated to Canada and different places. It wasn't just America, but you know, we're here to talk about America, so.
yeah, and yeah, you mentioned Chicago. I believe they uh, dye the river green every year, so yeah, that would track with a large population there. Um, and yeah, like we kind of through Jimmy and Alicia and our commentary, kind of already read this slide through just commentary, right? Where mass over a million fled. The Irish, as Alicia said, maybe or some of the immigrants or the community as a whole struggled with being accepted, maybe, or treated with, uh, being treated equal or proper. Um, but it's still with that diaspora and the mass immigration is millions, tens of millions of people even will claim Irish ancestry, whether it's Jimmy here now in the United States or other people. Get some big stuff there. But however, do we want to move to around just a little under 100 years ago with the Easter Rising? The IRA, Irish Republicans, launched the armed rebellion against British rule in Dublin, the city founded by the Vikings all those years ago. However, after a little under a week of fighting, the British forces were able to prevent the uprising, but not without some success from the rebels. The IRA, they got some key buildings, but there were some executions. But it did kind of have a rally around the flag effect.
Yeah, I think as well, a big part of the Easter Rising was that at this stage, like the public opinion in terms of independence was conflicting. Um, you know, I think there was like obviously an awful lot of struggle. So, but there was a turning point, which was when the British executed 16 of the rebel leaders by firing squad in Dublin. And this was in May of 1916, so would have just very close after the Easter Rising. And this was a massive shift in terms of public opinion. And after this execution of the 16 leaders, the public opinion really swayed towards wanting to be an independent country and fighting British rule and fighting the British authorities. So although probably the British view was we'll get rid of all the leaders, but actually they fueled the rebellion by killing almost all of the leaders. They didn't kill Michael Collins and they didn't kill Eamon de Valera. Eamon de Valera was also a very significant figure during the war, and He was on the opposite side when it comes to the Civil War, which we'll touch on later, to Michael Collins. But at this point, they were all fighting the same fight, which was to get rid of British rule off the island of Ireland. And a very significant point for your viewers is Eamon de Valera was actually born in America. So he was supposed to be executed during this time, but because he was technically an American by birth, even though his mother was Irish, they chose not to execute him because they felt that, it would cause, Britain felt it would cause conflict with America, and they decided that was too much of a risky decision. So they actually didn't execute Eamon de Valera during that period. So I think that's an important point to make. But yeah, obviously this was like a very significant time in Irish history and really was the beginning of the end of British rule.
Great points, Alicia. Awesome about the Easter Rising. And one of the gentlemen you just mentioned, Michael Collins, who was spared, key leader of the IRA during this rising. He organized the army using guerrilla warfare tactics and helped negotiate the Anglo-Irish Treaty in 21. And however, he was killed during the 1922 Irish Civil War, which helped him become a national hero.
Yeah, and where Michael Collins was born is not far from where I live, in the south of Ireland, and it's actually where my mother is from, in the town, and they have a beautiful museum, Michael Collins, the Michael Collins Museum, where you can go and learn about the Irish history of his life, and it's in his house in the town. So he was one of the very, very key figures, and as we'll talk about later on, he was, of course, wanting to be pro-treaty, and he was on the side that the giving over the 6 countries was a stepping stone to full Irish independence. And Eamon de Valera took the side that if we give Britain the 6 counties, we'll never get them back. So they were on conflicting sides in the end. But as we know, obviously, the 6 counties remained in the UK, and Michael Collins's position of being pro-treaty was more popular at the time. And then, of course, in due course, there was the Good Friday Agreement and whatnot. But actually, my own relation was was an Irish volunteer, and was in the IRA in 1917 in Clonakilty, and would have been part of the 3rd West Cork Brigade during the War of Independence as well. So I think a lot of Ireland is so small that we all have connections to this time in history, and a very monumental time as well.
Of course, yeah. Trying to get independence, all that good stuff. And speaking of independence, from 1919 1921, the IRA carried out these ambushes on and attacks against British forces. Britain deployed some of their soldiers, troops, paramilitary units known as Black and Tans, and however it did end with the treaty, the Anglo-Irish Treaty in 21 that Alicia alluded that Collins was pushing for. So, yeah, maybe, Alicia, do you have any family members that served in this, or would that be, would you say lots of people living in Ireland have ancestors that served?
Yeah, lots of people definitely would have relations who were part of the volunteers, and whether that was through fighting or intelligence sharing, or also helping people to hide during, of course, the guerrilla warfare, which was which was very sort of country-esque style fighting and warfare, which was of course developed by Michael Collins. And yeah, as I mentioned, my relative who was part of the volunteers, his name was Jim Murphy, and he would have been involved in that brigade. And he was his leader was Tom Barry, who was also a very significant leader in Cork and in Ireland, of the Flying Column. And one of the most I suppose infamous ambushes he was part of was called the Kilmichael ambush, which was in November 1920. And this was led by Tom Barry, and the 3rd Cork Brigade that he was part of. And it was one of the largest engagements in the War of Independence, where 36 volunteers ambushed officers of Britain and killed 16 officers during that ambush. So quite significant in a very, very, very rural part of Ireland. I can't describe how in the middle of nowhere Kilmichael is, but a very significant place now for that history around here. So yeah, I suppose a lot of people in Ireland would have relations that were some way involved. And also there were a lot of women involved in the War of Independence, not just with maybe the ways you would think, but also fighting. And there was lots of women's groups that were involved with fighting and intelligence sharing and whatnot. So the women also played a very significant role in the War of Independence and also the Civil War.
Super interesting. Yeah, especially women, right? We hear about women maybe cleaning or like helping with laundry, like preparing products. But it's cool to hear that they were directly involved up to a point. And heading to now the partition of Ireland, right? Alicia discussed these. Uh, so 20, I believe 26 of those counties became the what is now Ireland that we discussed today. However, those 6 counties remained intact with the UK, and is what we know today as the Republic of Ireland versus Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I think we've touched on that well. And I mean, the division is, I suppose we do say that there's peace on the island of Ireland now, but I wouldn't say that there's 100% peace. I mean, there have been significant steps, and the Good Friday Agreement was obviously one of the most major steps forward towards peace on the island, but there's still a long way to go. And I mean, I'm from the south of Ireland, and I think a lot of people in the south would say that we don't probably understand what goes on in the north of Ireland in terms of the tensions that are still there, as well as we probably should be. And there's obviously a variety of reasons for that. But it is difficult because in one way we're all on the same island, but it is still technically 2 different countries. So that can be complicated, and can also lead to this division of knowledge where we don't fully understand their experience of what it was like, and certainly don't understand what the Troubles were like for people, which was a devastating time. So it is tough that way. And I've met young people through political groups and whatnot who have shared their experiences, and we definitely don't get enough knowledge about what it's like when you live, say, in the Republic of Ireland, and particularly, I suppose, when you live as south as I do. Maybe if you live along the border, it's different, but definitely for me, living in Cork, it's not as you wouldn't have a very good understanding of what it's like, which is obviously not great. Like, I think for Ireland to move forward and to have a properly shared island of Ireland and to reflect on our history and develop, we probably need to understand more about what it's like for people on the other side of the border and who live in the north of Ireland.
Good point. Yeah, context is key, and a little kind of expanding on the Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, right? The capital city, we still know Dublin, capital of Republic, but Belfast, capital of Northern Ireland. And I guess maybe we've kind of touched up on this, but Elisa, would you say, just kind of something else I just thought of, would you say it's common for people to, like in the Republic of Ireland, to go to Northern Ireland and vice versa? Like, do you need a passport for that, or what's the deal with that?
Yeah, no, you don't need a passport. It's an open border, so
Mm-hmm.
that was part of the Good Friday Agreement that there wouldn't be any border control on the island. And there are people who live on the border. It's not like a wall or there's
Mm-hmm.
nobody there. It's just a border on a map, essentially, and
Okay.
a geographical location. And of course, with that comes such significance. But I just mean in terms of the literal, practical sense, there is no border. But obviously, in the political sense, there is a massive border. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but there are people who literally live like on the borderline, and people who commute to work either side, back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are people who identify as British, and there are people who identify as Irish, and there are people who identify as both. And that's that is the island of Ireland as it stands, and that is the reality for people who live here. So yeah, I suppose in the literal sense there isn't a border. And is it common? I think it is. Like, it is on the island, so I think people Belfast would be a very popular city, and I've been up north a few times myself. So I think it's, I mean, to drive from the top to the bottom of Ireland, I think would probably take you like 7 hours. So it's
Okay.
not that big of a place.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, because I was just kind of thinking, like, yeah, is there strict border? But like the way you describe it sounds like just going to DC to Virginia or DC Maryland or some. Yeah, there's lines on a map, but nothing. Uh, yeah, you're not going to be pulled over or like people are going to interrogate you, whatnot. So good to know for the audience. And we to touch up a little bit from the Irish Republican Army, the IRA. Wanted to unite Ireland militant group. They opposed the British control. Obviously, we kind of touched up on this a little bit. Guerrilla attacks, bombings, killings. Um, and even though there were different factions of the IRA, um, the provisional IRA, um, during the Troubles. So, just a little bit more about the Irish Republican Army. Kind of touched up on them a little bit, some of their tactics. So just a little extra there for you in the audience. Um, and then, yeah, so kind of getting off that high horse a little bit. We discussed, yeah, independence wars, the Irish Republican Army. Now, I believe so. I learned about this through the Netflix movie, one of the coolest movies. Yeah, probably a little dramatized. But one of the cooler, I'd say, aspects of Ireland's history is the siege of Jadotsville, or Jadotsville, maybe. You have these 150 UN peacekeepers deployed from the island, and sent to the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa, and the movie, and I think this number is accurate from probably what the movie was, but we have these. They were under siege, under attack the entire time, vastly outnumbered, but they were able to defend for 5 days without losing anybody. Everyone survived. So I believe the movie was able to say, or like kind of described the maybe sentiment from the population that they, at least from my knowledge and remembering, is that they were kind of shunned a little bit or weren't as celebrated um, as much there. So just kind of wanted to touch up a little bit on some of the more um, a more unique aspect of Irish history there with the siege of Jaditsville, excuse me. The Troubles. Uh, Alicia pointed to like this concluded with the I believe Good Friday Agreement of 1998, which is why it ends here. Um, yeah, very violent, bloody conflict in Northern Ireland. Um, Fought the IRA, other militias, um, and yeah, as I kind of mentioned, you have some of these in these cities, Belfast, Derry, um, that were under attack. Some major pinpoint pinnacle pinpoints within the country, and yeah, over 3,500 people were killed, lost their lives during these conflicts. So another pretty important, I should say, time period for the island. I just wanted to touch up a little bit there with that. And that leads to the all very important Good Friday Agreement, help bring an end to the Troubles. As Alicia said, um, there is still that political divide, but at least people are able to freely travel in and out, like commute for work, visit family on the other side. It's not the Great Wall or the Wall of Berlin or like maybe the southern border or like entering another country. Just that political line on the map, which created this power sharing agreement, right? So at least, hey, let's stop trying to kill each other, um, at least for the time being. And it allowed for the negotiating table to open back up through political discussion, through the political leadership, other important personnel that would be necessary for trying to solve this conflict, and was approved by the voters. So it wasn't just a political leadership, excuse me for that belch there, a political leadership for uh, coming to terms with this. It also required buy-in from the voting population. So um, just a little something there for you. And then you have, um, here, let's see. Yeah, just like some strands within the agreement. Strand 1, which established the Northern Ireland Assembly and Executive, which was power sharing agreement with the Unionists, who wanted to remain in the United Kingdom, and versus Nationalists who wanted the United Ireland. Um, the second strand, it created the North-South institutions such as North-South Ministerial Council, um, to facilitate and cooperate between Northern Ireland and the Republic, and the East-West institutions like the British Irish Council to support cooperation between the United Kingdom and Irish government. So just just a little bit for important part of history for you guys to understand. Said to the next guy. All right, let's go to some modern Ireland now. Right, the after this the Good Friday Agreement, there's definitely much more peace. The politics are stable, um, and one of the stronger democracies, definitely in Europe, right, and the maybe Western civilization as a whole. We as we were kind of joking about that the U.S. and Ireland have great relationships with one another, and there's trade, uh, technological investment, global investment within the island, just through all countries, um, and it is, uh, at least today, one of the fastest growing capital cities uh, in Europe. And as Alicia said, maybe hopefully they can start making a little bit of a comeback from the large population decrease during the famine. The Celtic Tiger, the economic growth from around the mid 90s to 2008, which some of these lower corporate taxes helped attract companies such as Google, Apple, Facebook, all those big guys, I should say. And the nation is still, um, yeah, a major hub, which helped raise living standards and economical and capital investment in Dublin and the country. So,
Yeah, and I think you've mentioned a very key point, which I think a lot of our European um, fellow European countries aren't a big fan of, which is our low corporation tax. It's 12.5%. And obviously now with the UK out of the EU, we are the only English speaking, English is the first language country within the EU.
hmm
So, and also like Ireland would have a very highly educated and trained workforce. So those three things would, and also it being, a pretty, well, as we've outlined, a very democratic country and a safe country in general, in the sense that, we're not at war with anyone, and we're a neutral country in terms of any military operations. So I suppose for all those aspects, it's quite an attractive place for multinational companies. Quite a stable economy as of now, stable political system. So, as you've said, Google, Apple, Meta, TikTok as well are here. I know you guys love them, and all the big guys, and lots of, also I think, not just the technology companies but the pharmaceutical companies, which I think the president has actually referenced last year, I think, when the Taoiseach was at the White House, in regards to tariffs, and I suppose wanting a lot of those big companies to come back to America. um but I suppose, as it stands, for all those reasons, it is why they are attracted to Ireland. Whether that will change or not, I don't know. But as of now, and I suppose in the past, it's been an attractive place for those big companies and a stable place to be.
good point. Yeah, uh, military neutral, so like they're never going to be too caught up in anything that might divert attention to foreign conflicts or whatnot. And so, something that a lot of people, or I should say, have mentioned about Ireland recently is the uh, maybe this cultural change with immigration, right? Um, yeah, we saw during the famine, Ireland was where more people, and like Jimmy's family as well. A lot of people fled the island or immigrated, and didn't maybe move into as much since like right island. Um, there was yeah, during the Celtic Tiger years there was a lot of uh, increase of immigration in the country, in the island, from Eastern Europe, Africa, Middle East, all over the place. But now something that might be a little cultural divide or political divide even in the country is mass immigration. Do people talk about this issue a lot, Alicia? Would you say?
Yeah, I think Ireland is actually massively impacted by American politics, and in terms of what we talk about in society, and like Ireland also just loves pop culture and being engrossed in all of those things. And I think the glamour of US politics, probably next to Irish politics, just fascinates us. So I think when things, I mean, I think a lot of most countries are probably impacted by what's going on in America or what's talked about in America, but immigration has become a topic for every country's mind. Whether that was sparked by America or not, I'm not sure, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I think naturally immigration has become. I mean, I don't think, honestly, 3 or 4 years ago anyone was, if you asked me what were the three biggest topics talked about in Irish politics, I probably wouldn't have said immigration, and now it is.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily negative or positive, but there's definitely a bigger conversation and a bigger debate going about it. And obviously, we're part of the EU, so we have certain legal obligations that we have to undertake, where we enjoy within the EU as EU citizens freedom of movement, to go to any EU country we want to work. Um, So, with all of that, and obviously, as we've discussed at length, we share what is essentially an open border with north of Ireland, which
Hmm.
is technically obviously in the UK. So that, and they are not in the EU. So you can imagine there's difficulties there in terms of people coming in through maybe that through the UK and whatnot. So there's definitely challenges with I think the border sharing and as I've said, the conversation has become bigger, but I think that's just because really the topic has become bigger globally, and
Mm.
it particularly in America. And I do think that conversation is heavily influenced in Ireland by what is happening in America, whether we mean it or not. So it's definitely become a bigger conversation. But I think Ireland's just an attractive country, and Irish people are, I would hope everyone agree, are very welcoming people. And as we've discussed as well, and as Jimmy has mentioned about his family, so many Irish people have immigrated, and I don't think you could go to any country in the world and not find an Irish pub.
Hmm.
So, we're used to immigrating and people, often welcoming us. So I think we have it in our nature to understand immigration. And I think most families in Ireland would have at least one family member who has immigrated at some point, and maybe they've come back or maybe they haven't. But I think we have a very unique understanding of immigration because of our history, and particularly the famine, like we've discussed about, where we had no choice, really. So, or your choices were very limited. So yeah, I suppose it has become, the short answer is that it has become a topic of conversation more than it was a few years ago.
Good point. Yeah, I think your answer will probably make some people think about the all the diaspora from during the famine, and how Ireland people, or not Ireland people from Ireland, um, will generally maybe just kind of think about their history and say, okay, yeah, maybe we need to help some people. So good points there.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
I think it's probably, we have our own domestic issues as well, which would be at the forefront of people's minds. Like we have a massive housing crisis, we have cost of living problems. So I suppose in the debate, you factor in all these things about the country and what's best for the country and how we can strike balance between supporting people who need it and also, making sure that we have the resources to support everyone who is here.
Hmm. Absolutely. And something, just doing some local research, just about maybe some current day stuff. This murder, maybe you've seen or heard of this, but murder of Ashleen Murphy in 2022, a 23-year-old school teacher on a jog. Uh, and it really, maybe this was maybe a defining event that was maybe striking to people in Ireland, that maybe made this discussion, to your point, increase in the last couple of years. Seemed to be a nationwide, island-wide mourning period, and yeah, started some of the more safety and social change aspects with the country.
Yeah, I mean, don't think any Irish person doesn't know the story of the murder of Aisling Murphy and just feel honestly utter heartbreak about the tragedy. And she was a school teacher and a musician and a beautiful, beautiful young woman who, it's just there's no words really for such a tragedy. But I mean, I think the significance of it was that she was out daytime. I think it was just after she had finished school for the day. So in Ireland, that might be like for elementary school kids, like 2, 3 o'clock, and was out
Mm-hmm.
for a run in broad daylight in her local town. And really, she lives in a very, very rural part of Ireland. It's not like she lives in, Dublin or a major city. Um, So I think that was the significance of it. And obviously, people tell women don't run alone at night, don't walk alone in a dark alleyway, don't walk home drunk or something. But, I think the shocking part of this was it was broad daylight and it was just in her local little village. And just so harrowing what happened. So, I mean, obviously, she's not the only woman to be murdered in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, there's many, many women who are murdered in Ireland by men at the hands of men. So it's just one tragedy amongst all, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it just seemed to be a very uh, well known and discussed tragedy, to your point, on the island. And then Guinness, everybody's favorite beer, especially around this time of year. I'd say I've had a couple myself the last couple of days to get ready to celebrate tomorrow. Just to say that, yeah, one of the exports, right? That's why Guinness in America, especially in DC, if you go to any bar, it's probably $8 to $11 maybe per pint. Um, Tastes real good, right? Kind of makes you forget about the price of it, how creamy that pint is. But yeah, founded by in Dublin, the city uh, birthed by the Vikings all the way back then by Arthur Guinness. Drink is known for its dark stout, that creamy low head, and sold in over 150 countries worldwide. So helped Ireland's economy for sure.
Yeah, massively. And yeah, Guinness is obviously the most famous Irish beer, but there are many other ones. We have our own one in Cork called
Mm-hmm.
Murphy's as well, which would be a competition with Guinness within Ireland, but of
Mm-hmm.
course globally. And as you've said, in 150 countries, Guinness is the go-to drink. And I'll be interested to see. Usually, they publish the statistics for how much Guinness has been bought on St. Patrick's Day. So I'll be interested to read those. I'll definitely be contributing to that figure tomorrow.
Heck yeah. No, that's a. I'll try to find that, and I'll make sure I put in the link for this this video so people can check that out. That sounds like a lot of fun there. Yeah, awesome. And one last can touch up on him briefly. Mr. McGregor tried to run for president, but however failed to meet some requirements that were necessary for launching the candidacy, or must be formally nominated by 20 members of parliament, 4 local councils, which I thought was pretty interesting uh, to learn about that little fact. As we know, yeah, big UFC guy. He'd always. What was the major line? I'll apologize to absolutely effing nobody. Just a pretty masculine guy that seems to be popular among young American men, I should say. Big athlete worldwide. Not sure how much you want to say about Mr. McGregor, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to say much about him because he has become a very controversial figure in Ireland. And as you said, used to be, was a UFC fighter, was very popular and had his famous sayings and contributed to the world of sport. But I'm not sure what happened, but really he shifted into a different different world,
Mm-hmm.
and he was found civilly liable for rape in Ireland last year.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure if people would know that across the Atlantic, but it was a very sad case, and his the victim, Nikita Hand, came out and came forward and took him on and took the system on, and she won. And I think it just speaks to the fact that just because you have loads of money and you're famous doesn't mean you're going to get away with committing such crimes and violence. And for those reasons and for other reasons, just his behavior in general and things he's done in Ireland, I think a lot of public opinion on him has swayed. And I think, I mean, but amongst myself and my peers, nobody really supported him for president. And I don't actually know anyone that would have supported him to go for president. But I assume that in America, probably what's known of him is his UFC history and his fights and whatnot. But I think a lot has happened since then, and definitely public opinion in Ireland would be quite different now.
Right, definitely. And yeah, I didn't know about that case, so pretty not a great case there for Mr. McGregor. However, I do want to move back to full screen. So open, yeah, that's our slide deck. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit about Ireland tonight. Just maybe a couple minutes if anyone has a question. Don't want to stay on here too long though. But yeah, thank you to Jimmy for contributing to this conversation a whole bunch, and a big thanks to our special guest Alicia for bringing her shared and real world experience about Ireland and living in Ireland through her involvement in politics to this discussion. Hopefully you guys all learned a lot. Here I'll remove there we go. Get your face clean on the comment section. But yeah, leave it open for a minute or two. Don't want to stay on too long, as I mentioned. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in today. And if you're new, would love if you hit that, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back with you tomorrow morning. We'll be walking around DC again, taking your questions. But yeah, everybody. So yeah, hopefully you guys are able to crack a Guinness tomorrow or maybe tonight even. Hopefully Alicia has a wonderful St. Patrick's Day and safe St. Patrick's Day in Ireland. But yeah, hopefully you guys learned something tonight about Ireland. We'll definitely try to get clips out, shorts and videos for you to catch up on if you weren't here during the live. But however, yeah, looks like I think we're good on questions. Yet any parting words, Alicia, that you'd like to say?
No, I'll just say, similar to you, hope everyone has a good St. Patrick's Day and all the best from Ireland. And you'll see our Taoiseach, our Prime Minister, in the White House tomorrow. So hopefully he'll do us proud, and he'll be giving your president a bowl of shamrock for good luck. So wish you all the best, and bye from Ireland.
Alrighty, everybody. Well, thank you for tuning in tonight. We'll be back tomorrow morning for sure. Here, let me think if there's any other housekeeping. No, just please send this to a friend. Send this podcast to a friend. We'll be uploading it at the conclusion of this on Spotify, Rumble, all those good guys. So, yeah, if no one else has anything else, would just like to say you have been awoken with Aulden. And much love, everybody. Good night. Thank you again to Alicia, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Happy St. Patrick's Day.